I paid for the venue, the food, the dress, every inch of my sister's wedding. And the night before it all, her groom's sister pointed at me in front of everyone and said, "You're not welcome here." Cheryl stood beside her, silent, not a word, not even my name. They erased me from a wedding I built with my own hands. So I smiled and made one phone call. "Now tell me, what would you have done?" The envelope was heavy, embossed lettering, ivory stock, gold trim, clearly expensive. I held it for a second longer than usual before sliding my finger under the flap. It read, "Family of Cheryl Araujo." That alone gave me pause. No first names, no mention of me. Inside, the same story. The inner envelope didn't say Rowena Vergata anywhere. No +1, no beloved sister, just family. I flipped through the RSVP card, the itinerary, even the monogrammed insert with directions to the venue. Nothing. My name didn't exist there. For a moment, I considered that maybe it was an accident, a print error, that maybe Cheryl hadn't double-checked the list, maybe the planner had messed up, maybe. "Must be a mistake," I whispered, but the voice in my gut said otherwise. Funny how an empty line on fancy paper can say so much more than 1,000 words ever could. I picked up the phone that night, thinking I could brush it off lightly, slide it into conversation. Cheryl answered after 2 rings. She sounded distracted, like she had 1,000 tabs open in her head. "Hey," I started. "Just got the invite. Looks beautiful." "Oh, right, yeah. The planner mailed those out this week. Glad you got yours." "Mm-hmm." I nodded into the silence. I noticed the envelope just says family, no name. She laughed, too quickly. "Oh, you know how these planners are. They're all about aesthetics. Don't sweat the details." No apology, no correction. I said, "Sure, not a big deal." Tried to sound breezy. She changed the subject within seconds. Something about the seating arrangement and who might sit next to who. I let her go on. When she hung up, I stared at the screen for a long while. I wasn't looking for flowers. I was looking to be seen. The next evening, over a quiet dinner at Mom's, I tried again. Gently. "I got Cheryl's invitation," I said, cutting into my casserole. She didn't even look up. "Lovely design, huh?" "Very elegant." I paused, fork in hand. "Yeah, my name wasn't on it." Mom sighed. Not the kind that shows concern, but the kind that says, "Here we go again." "It's Cheryl's big day, Ro. Don't go looking for cracks in the ceiling." That phrase, one she'd used all my life. Like I was always trying to find something wrong with what was perfectly fine. "You know how she is," she added, pouring herself another glass of tea. "Let her have her spotlight." I nodded. Of course. Always the gracious one. Be the bigger person. Don't make waves. I stayed behind after dinner to clean the table. Mom turned up the volume on her evening news and didn't look back once. Sometimes being surrounded by family feels lonelier than being alone. 3 days later, an email pinged into my inbox. It was from the wedding planner. Mistakenly forwarded. Subject line, "Final seating chart, reviewed by bride." I shouldn't have opened it, but I did. Scanned it, page after page. Names. Couples. Children. I wasn't on it. Cheryl's old roommate from college. There. Her fiancé's third cousin. There. Me. Missing. I stared at the screen until the words blurred. Then I started highlighting every name I didn't recognize. The list grew quickly. If I vanished tomorrow, I muttered, they'd still throw the same party. That thought clung to me like humidity. Late that night, I pulled out the old mental ledger, everything I'd done, paid Cheryl's rent after her first divorce, sat through hospital visits with Mom, hosted Thanksgiving 3 years straight, drove 3 hours each way for a graduation that wasn't even mine. "I've always been part of the scaffolding," I whispered to no one. Needed, but never shown. Even in my last relationship, I played the quiet, supportive role, too selfless to fight, too polite to demand. That's how I'd lost him. And now, I was losing my place in my own family. The same silent way. No explosion, no betrayal, just quiet erasure. Over years, layer by layer, the final irony came in the form of a new email from the planner. To ensure we have your meal preference, please confirm your attendance, Ms. Vergata. So now they remembered my name. I typed, attending, no dietary restrictions. Paused, stared at the blinking cursor. Then I hit backspace. All of it. Closed the laptop. I wouldn't respond. I wouldn't forget. I showed up 10 minutes early. Cheryl had mentioned something about the bridal shower being at a rented space near downtown. I figured arriving early might help, not with setting up necessarily, but to settle in before it all began. I carried in a tray of lemon bars I'd baked the night before. A habit. Something to offer. No one had asked me to bring anything, but I did anyway. I didn't know there'd be a full spread already laid out by a catering team. Long tables lined with finger food, servers in matching black aprons, music trickling in through wireless speakers, candles set in gold-trimmed votives like Pinterest had come to life. I stepped into the room and was met with a smile from the planner. It was warm, but practiced. I greeted a few women at the entryway, Cheryl's colleagues, I think. They nodded, polite, disengaged. When I asked where I should place my tray, Sophrona, the groom's sister, was already there, eyes scanning the tables like she was running quality control. The helpers usually go in the back, she said, not even looking at me. I paused, then nodded. Nobody corrected her, not Cheryl, not anyone. I walked toward the back corner and set the tray down on a secondary table, tucked near the kitchen hallway. It wasn't meant for display, more of a holding area. The place cards were already laid out. Everyone had a cute calligraphy-style name tag. I searched for mine, thinking maybe it was at Cheryl's table. It wasn't. Instead, I found it tucked between the florist's assistant and a guy with a clipboard, who I assumed handled lighting. Miss E. Vergata. Cake planning support. 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 I sat down. The chair rocked slightly. My napkin was folded differently from the others. Smaller. No lace. I let out a quiet laugh. Not bitter, just surprised. No one around me thought it was odd. That was the worst part. At some point, Cheryl walked by. She didn't even glance at where I was sitting. She was too busy laughing at something Sophrona had said. I adjusted my seat. I smiled like I was supposed to. But inside, it hit different. Halfway through lunch, a little girl, maybe 6 or 7, approached my table. One of Cheryl's friend's kids. She looked up at me and asked, with complete innocence, "Are you one of the helpers? Mommy said helpers sit in the back." I bent down a little, looked her in the eyes, and said, "Something like that." She smiled, nodded, and ran back to her table. A few women overheard. They didn't say anything, didn't even look sorry. That kind of moment sticks with you, not because it's dramatic, but because it's so normal, like it's just part of the script now. And I remember thinking, clear as day, when the smallest ones start repeating what the biggest ones believe, the truth gets harder to ignore. By dessert, the group had started getting loud. Toast time. A bridesmaid clinked her glass. To family, she said. To love, to those who've made this day possible. Names rolled out. Cheryl's fiancé, her maid of honor. Bridesmaids, her future in-laws. I wasn't included, of course not. But I still raised my glass, took a sip, held the smile. Not because I felt proud, but because I'd been doing it so long it felt mechanical. That's the strange place I lived in. Not quite invited, not fully forgotten. Somewhere in the middle, quiet, present, invisible. And I remember thinking, maybe it's not even about being thanked. Maybe it's about them not noticing they never thought to. You can't demand applause from people who never thought you were on stage. By the time things started winding down, most guests were slipping out, goodie bags in hand, kisses on cheeks. I stayed, folded chairs, collected plates, tied up half-used ribbon, old habits. As I was loading leftover drinks into my car, Sophrona walked by. She didn't even stop, just said over her shoulder, "Thanks for all your help today. We couldn't have done it without the vendor team." The vendor team. Like I was staff. Cheryl stood nearby. She heard it, saw it, didn't say a word. I looked at both of them and smiled. "You're welcome." Then I got in my car and drove off. That night, I was folding laundry when it hit me. Not in a loud, angry way, but in that dull ache behind the ribs kind of way. They didn't forget me. They placed me exactly where they thought I belonged. And the scary part? They weren't wrong, because I'd been letting them do it for years. This wasn't a one-time slip. It was systemic. It was practiced. And it was mine to finally undo. I thought about my niece, her voice, the way she asked so plainly, "Are you one of the helpers?" Maybe the most dangerous silence isn't mine. It's theirs. The email came in while I was rinsing my coffee mug. Subject line, "Final seating chart, reviewed by bride." It was a forward, not meant for me. No message, no explanation. I opened it. Just a PDF. I scrolled. Then again, then slowly, alphabetically, like I was combing for a missed spelling or a typo. Nothing. No Rowena, no Roe. Plenty of names I didn't recognize. Cheryl's old college roommate, some cousin from the groom's side, even the hairdresser's husband. But not me. The file was labeled confirmed, like it had been reviewed, approved, sealed. Not an oversight. Not this time. Some exclusions come in soft fonts and elegant formatting. I picked up my phone, typed, "Hey, just saw the seating chart. Am I missing something?" I saw it go through. Read. No reply. An hour later, Cheryl posted a photo of her nails. "Wedding ready," it said. That was her reply. 2 days passed. I typed again. "Don't want to be a bother, just checking." Then I stared at it. Deleted the message. They never say no. They just let the silence say it louder. That Friday, Bobby told me the bridesmaids were going for final fittings. She said I should come, casually, like I was part of the plan. So I showed up. The boutique was small, white, softly lit. A woman behind the counter looked up and smiled like I was early for a meeting. "Oh, are you here to confirm Cheryl's alterations?" Before I could answer, Cheryl walked in from the dressing room and said over her shoulder, "No, she's just helping out." Just helping out. The other women gave half laughs. I nodded. What else could I do? In a room full of mirrors, I still didn't see myself. After the fitting, Bobby and I walked 2 blocks down to a quiet diner. She offered to treat, said I needed pie. We sat in a booth by the window. She hesitated, stirring her tea. "I thought you weren't coming to the wedding," she said. "Your name's not even on the family itinerary." I blinked. Tried to laugh it off. Maybe I'm the surprise guest. But my voice cracked halfway through the joke. Bobby leaned forward. "I notice things," she said. "And Cheryl always forgets you. She never means to, but she does. You're the one who shows up for everything. They never show up for you." I didn't answer. Didn't need to. The truth had already landed. We split the pie. I barely tasted it. That night, I left the car downtown and walked. My shoes weren't made for it, but I walked anyway. The street was alive. Musicians playing jazz near the market, couples holding hands, people sipping wine on patios like life had never once bruised them. I kept walking, thinking, watching. Everyone else seemed fine. Maybe they were. And maybe I was the only one keeping track, counting the slights, remembering every time I was left out or mislabeled or quietly dismissed. When they forget you long enough, you start wondering if you were ever there. I ended up on the Riverwalk, sat on a bench near the edge of the path, pulled out my phone, started drafting an email to the caterer. I typed, "Hi, this is Rowena Vergata. I'm the listed contract holder for..." Stopped. Deleted the message. Instead, I pulled out an old notebook from my bag, the one I used to jot down family to-dos, appointments, birthdays, turned to a fresh page, started a list: venue, catering, florist, photographer, band. Each name I'd signed for, each check I'd cut. I circled them one by one. Maybe my silence has been too expensive. I got there early, not to impress anyone, God knows that ship sailed, but because Cheryl had casually said, "If you have time, maybe come by a little before." So I did. The country club was polished and glowing, like someone had sprayed gold dust on every surface. Staff buzzed around like clockwork, placing linen napkins just so, adjusting lights, setting out candles that cost more per piece than what I made in an entire weekend shift back in my 20s. I walked in carrying a folder with my printed speech. Had written it 3 nights before, kept it short, clear, warm. I'd timed it, even practiced it twice out loud. One of the event staff asked if I needed help. I said no, just looking for where I was slotted to speak. She blinked, checked her clipboard. Are you the coordinator? No, I said. Just family. She smiled like I was a guest wandering too close to the buffet, then walked off. I opened the program book sitting on a side table. No mention of my name. Not even in the footnotes. Funny how you can be erased without ever being crossed out. I found Cheryl near the stage, pointing at the arrangement of chairs. She looked up briefly and said, "Oh, hey, we ended up cutting the speeches. The planner said it'd drag too long." I nodded. "Hope that's okay," she added. "I mean, no one really likes long speeches, right?" I smiled. Inside, something broke. Not loudly, not dramatically, but with the quiet of a hairline fracture finally widening. I walked away without saying much. There wasn't anything to say. When someone breaks your name off the guest list, you call it logistics. When they break it off your voice, you call it timing. Dinner rolled in like a train that never slowed down. Appetizers, entrees, drinks. Everyone buzzing around tables lit with votives and excitement. Then came the toasts. The maid of honor first, sweet, slightly tipsy, long-winded. Then the groom's father. Then Cheryl. She stood, tapped her glass, and thanked her fiancé, his parents, the wedding planner, the decorator, the woman who did her nails. Sophrona, of course, got an extra nod for being the backbone of this whole process. I sat 2 tables away, well within her line of sight. My name never came up. She looked past me like I was an empty chair someone forgot to fold. At the next table, my mother sat with a glass of white wine. She heard it all. Saw it. She didn't speak. Didn't look at me. She just folded her napkin. Perfectly. Slowly. When your mother doesn't speak up for you, the silence becomes generational. After dessert, I excused myself. Claimed I needed to fix my hair, though I barely touched it. The bathroom smelled like vanilla and money. I stood in front of the mirror, smoothing my blouse, pretending I wasn't unraveling from the inside. A bridesmaid I didn't know walked in. She paused. "You're Edna, right? I thought you were the planner." I smiled. "Close enough." She laughed, thinking it was a joke. You don't need a slap to feel the sting. Sometimes it's a compliment with the wrong name. Later, as the crowd thinned, I waited outside near my car, hoping for just a moment with Cheryl. She came out with a glass in her hand, heels in the other. I stepped forward. "You didn't mention me," I said. "Not once." She blinked. "Already tired, already halfway into tomorrow." "You're making this about you," she said. "It was just a detail." I let it sit, let her hear the weight of what she just called me. "Maybe that's all I've ever been to you," I said. She rolled her eyes. "You're being dramatic." There it was, that word, dramatic. The catch-all phrase people use when they want you to feel guilty for bleeding. When they call you dramatic for naming what hurts, they're really asking you to stay quiet forever. I didn't argue, didn't beg for understanding. I walked to my car, started it. The road home was quiet, the kind that echoes every thought you try to avoid. City lights scattered across my windshield like little ghosts. A wedding song came on the radio. I shut it off. At a red light, I whispered, "Never again." Not to be forgotten, not to be quiet, not to be erased. The silence in that car was heavier than any dinner speech I never gave. The brooch was one of those things passed down without drama. My grandmother never wore flashy jewelry. She wasn't that type. But that little piece, a gold leaf with a cracked green stone in the center, meant something. She wore it to every church potluck and holiday dinner, always pinned to her right shoulder. After she passed, Mom gave it to me with no ceremony, just, "She'd want you to have it." A week before the wedding, I brought it to a family brunch, nothing formal, just Cheryl, a few cousins, and a lot of chatter. I'd tucked the brooch inside a simple velvet box, handed it to Cheryl privately when she hugged me hello. Later, during dessert, she stood to give a quick thank you. "I just want to shout out Mahola for this beautiful gift," she said, holding the brooch in the air. "Absolutely perfect for the big day." I didn't say anything. I looked at Mahola. She blinked, confused, then smiled politely and shrugged. No one looked my way. Cheryl didn't make eye contact, not once. I smiled, just enough to avoid questions. Sometimes they don't steal your things, they just pretend you never gave them. Later that day, I stopped by Cheryl's house. She needed help putting up a photo board for the reception. I brought a stapler and painter's tape, like she asked. The board was full of memories, vacations, school dances, holidays, but not one photo of me, not even the group shot from Thanksgiving last year that I had framed and mailed out myself. "Where'd all these come from?" I asked, not accusing, just noting. "Oh, mostly from Facebook," she said, not looking up. While digging through drawers for tape, I opened the wrong one. Inside, under a mess of USB cords and dried-out pens, I found an old photo of the two of us as kids. Christmas. Matching sweaters. I remembered the moment exactly. I was 8, she was 11. She'd insisted we both wear bows in our hair, even though mine kept falling off. The frame was chipped, dusty, tucked away like it didn't belong anymore. When people keep your picture but bury the frame, they're not just tidying, they're rewriting. That evening, I sat across from Cheryl at her kitchen table. No wine, no music, just tea. "I wanted to ask," I said gently, "about the brooch." She blinked, unbothered. "What about it?" "It was from me." "Oh," she said, frowning slightly. "I thought it was from Mahola." "You never asked." She sipped her tea. "Does it matter?" "Yes," I said. "It does." She set her cup down, tone shifting. "Rowena, why are you picking fights over details?" I leaned back, steady. "Because I've been the detail for 20 years. She crossed her arms. "You're making this about you. Again." I didn't raise my voice. I didn't cry. But my voice trembled, not from fear, but from the weight of silence cracking. She waited for me to explode. I didn't. I stood up. "I'm not fighting. I'm just done pretending." Then I left. 2 days later, I met Talitha for coffee. Old friend, straight shooter. We hadn't seen each other in months, but she hugged me like we'd spoken yesterday. We sat by the window. I told her everything. Well, most of it. She listened without interrupting. When I was done, she said softly, "Don't burn the bridge, Ro. It's still family." I stared outside. A couple walked past holding hands. Someone honked down the street. "What if," I said, "they already crossed and pulled the bridge up behind them?" She didn't answer right away. She didn't need to. When I got home, I pulled out the wedding binder. I'd built it like a contractor. Contracts in plastic sleeves, receipts clipped with color-coded tabs, everything signed by me. I flipped through it. Venue, florist, photographer, music, catering. I picked up a red pen and circled each name one by one. When I got to the caterer, I hesitated, longer than the rest. I stared at the ink. They thought my silence was endless. They never asked what it was hiding. I walked to the window. Evening had settled in, street quiet. Porch lights on across the cul-de-sac. Someone was barbecuing 3 doors down. I pulled out my phone, typed, "If I cancel, what's the penalty?" Didn't hit send. I closed the screen. Set the phone down next to the binder, not from hesitation, from control. Warnings aren't always loud. Sometimes they're just unread emails. The call came in while I was wiping down my kitchen counter. The venue coordinator. She sounded chipper, rushed, running through the weekend checklist. I let her talk. When she said, "We've confirmed all vendors for tomorrow, Ms. Vergata. Since you're the primary contact on record, you should receive the final invoice within the hour." I paused. Primary contact. Still. I thanked her, hung up, and refreshed my inbox. There it was. A clean PDF, crisp header, detailed breakdown, final charges, venue, catering, DJ, photography, florals, everything, all under my name. I printed it, sat down at the table, red pen in hand. I circled each item, not out of pettiness, but precision, a kind of clarity that doesn't come often, but when it does, it burns clean. I slipped the invoice into my purse. I didn't need their thanks, but I refused to fund my own humiliation. The rehearsal started around 6. I arrived a little after. The clubhouse was glowing with twinkling lights and fake laughter. People were sipping wine and posing for photos that looked like something out of a commercial for toothpaste. I spotted Cheryl near the front. I moved toward her, slow but steady. Sophrona got to me first, loud, calculated. "You've caused enough problems," she said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "You're not welcome here." Music faded. Conversations stalled. I felt every eye swing in my direction. Cheryl stood off to the side. She saw it, heard it. She didn't move, didn't speak, didn't flinch. That's when I understood. This wasn't just Sophrona's attack. It was Cheryl's permission. I didn't say a word. I turned, walked through the rows of chairs like they were pews in a church where I didn't belong anymore. Outside, the evening air clung to my skin. I sat in the car with the door closed, keys untouched. My phone buzzed. One message after another. "Please don't ruin the evening. Don't make it worse. Not tonight." Not one asked, "Are you okay?" Not one asked what they did. I reached into my purse, pulled out the invoice, unfolded it like scripture. I read it line by line. If I paid for the stage, why did they think they could write me out of the script? I stared ahead at the dark trees lining the driveway. Somewhere inside the building, someone was laughing. Toasting. I dialed the number. "Hello?" the planner said. I didn't hesitate. "I need to cancel every remaining payment under my name." Silence. "I'm sorry?" "The venue. Catering. DJ. Flowers. Anything you haven't already processed, I'm pulling." "Ms. Vergata, this is very last minute." "Is it legally mine?" "Yes, of course, but—" "Then cancel it." Another pause. "I'll handle it." Click. I didn't burn the bridge, I just stopped carrying it. When I got home, I placed the invoice in the binder. The same binder that had once been filled with excitement and post-it notes and doodles about color schemes. Now it felt heavier, solid. Bobby called. I answered. "Are you okay?" she asked. "I'm fine," I said. Truthfully, I've just stopped paying to be mistreated. We didn't talk long. We didn't need to. That night, I sat by the window, chamomile tea in hand. No TV, no music, just the stillness of a house where nobody's asking anything of you for once. I wasn't dreading tomorrow. I was curious. Let them wake up to what they've built, without me. The phone lit up again. New messages. I turned it face down. My reflection stared back from the dark window. Not angry, just done. When you stop funding your own erasure, silence becomes strategy. The first thing I saw that morning was Cheryl's name on my screen. Voicemail. I didn't listen to it right away. Something about the way it sat there, alone and loud, told me it wasn't worth starting the day with, but the texts kept coming in right behind it. "Why would you do this?" We're shocked. "Please don't ruin this for her." Not one message asked what happened. Not one checked if I was okay. They just assumed I had snapped. I left the phone face down on the table and made coffee slow. Not because I needed time to think, but because I didn't need to rush anywhere anymore. I wasn't going. I picked out a blouse, pressed slacks, nothing fancy, not for a celebration, for clarity. If they wanted chaos, they could wade through it alone. By mid-morning, the venue was unraveling. I didn't have to be there to know it. Bobby texted updates. Vendors hadn't arrived. The florist didn't answer her phone. The planner was pacing like a metronome on caffeine. Cheryl was in full tears before noon. No sound system, no flowers, no cake. I imagined Sophrona trying to control the crowd, her voice a little higher than usual, snapping at anyone within arm's reach. One guest whispered, "Didn't Rowena handle the contracts?" Someone else replied, "Why would she cancel all this?" Then the third voice came, "Maybe because she paid for all of it." That's when the narrative started to shift, not with a bang, with a sentence. The officiant, bless him, tried to salvage the silence. During his opening, he thanked everyone he could think of. "And a special thanks to our generous godmother, Edna Vergata," he said. The name echoed louder than it should have. Gasps, some audible, some internal. Sophrona was the first to jump in. "She's not the godmother," she barked. The officiant stumbled, corrected himself, but the damage was done. Cheryl stood nearby, caught somewhere between fury and shame. She didn't correct him, didn't nod, didn't look at anyone. And the people started whispering. Not just gossip, recollection. They built a stage on my foundation and forgot who poured the concrete. Laid into the disarray, the replacement cake finally showed up. It was smaller than the original, less detail, rushed. The delivery guy stepped up and asked, "Which one of you is Mahola?" Mahola stepped forward, wide-eyed, then smiled like it was hers all along. The planner thanked her. Cheryl hugged her. I'd paid for the original cake 4 weeks ago. One of the caterers leaned into Bobby and whispered, "This whole thing's a mess. None of this would have happened if she was treated right." Bobby didn't say anything. She just pressed record on her phone. As the crowd shifted in their chairs and murmured grew louder, stories started surfacing. One cousin said, "Rowena was the one who helped Cheryl after the divorce." Another nodded. "She's always the one showing up, birthdays, hospitals, whatever." A few guests sat in silence, just watching the unravel. No argument, no shouting, just memory doing its work. They erased me in public. Now they'll remember me in whispers. Back across town, I sat in a small cafe by the window, sipping iced tea. Tourists passed by, some laughing, some lost. I wasn't part of their wedding anymore, wasn't supposed to be. I scrolled through my contract folder on my phone, clicked through each vendor, marked them closed. Bobby texted, "Everyone's talking, and they're on your side." I didn't reply, just stared at the message, then smiled. The war wasn't loud, but it was thorough. Let them find out who really held the glue. I ignored every call that morning. The phone buzzed from one end of the counter to the other, like it was trying to drag me back into something I'd already walked out of. I let it fall silent, poured myself a cup of tea, sat by the window with an old novel I hadn't touched in months. Tried reading, but the words slid past me. Not because I was distracted, but because, for once, I wasn't angry. I wasn't anxious. I wasn't anything. Stillness. That's what it felt like. After the storm, the mess, the decision, I was finally still. Then Bobby sent a message. Just 4 words. "Check your Facebook, now." I sighed. Not ready, but curious. I set my mug down, opened the laptop, and there it was. The clip started mid-sentence. Sophronia's voice, recorded by someone with shaky hands, but clear enough. She just wanted to feel important. We let her think she was. My name wasn't spoken, but it didn't have to be. Then it cut to a stitched overlay, screenshots of contracts. My name at the bottom of every page, deposit receipts, emails between me and the planner. Highlighted, circled. Then Cheryl's voice from a rehearsal clip. She wasn't part of this family anymore. I felt the breath leave my chest, but I didn't flinch. The comments rolled in fast. She paid for the whole thing and they tossed her? This is straight-up emotional abuse. Women like her hold families together and get kicked to the curb. I read every word, not to relive it, but to remind myself I wasn't imagining this. Later that afternoon, Cheryl made her move. A post. Family dynamics are complicated. We all make mistakes in stressful times. I'm sorry if anyone felt hurt. The "if" was doing a lot of work. The comments weren't having it. Mistake or manipulation? You didn't forget her. You erased her. Name your apology or don't bother. Even mutual friends started resharing the clip, some with emojis, some with silence. Then the text came. "Can you help me stop this?" I stared at it, didn't reply. Some bridges burn without you lifting a match. That night, the messages started coming from people I hadn't spoken to in years. Old coworkers, distant cousins, even Cheryl's former friends. Most started the same. "I always thought you deserved better." Others were more honest. "I saw how they treated you. I stayed quiet because I didn't know how to defend you. I should have said something." I didn't respond to any of them, but I read every one. And there was one message that stuck. Just one sentence. "You were the anchor. They just didn't see the chain." I don't know who sent it. No profile photo. No name I recognized. But it landed. That night, I sat in front of my bathroom mirror longer than I meant to. No makeup, just me. I was never asking for applause, I whispered. Just acknowledgement. Being right doesn't feel like victory. It feels like gravity. I walked into the guest room, opened the drawer of the old dresser where I'd shoved all things wedding-related. Right there on top, folded neatly, was the napkin I'd shaped like a maple leaf for Cheryl's bridal shower. I picked it up, smoothed it out, didn't cry, just placed it inside a small box. Not because it meant something, but because I did. I built this day. I dismantled it. And I did it without raising my voice. The next morning, I opened my social media account for the first time in weeks, drafted one short post. You can only be erased when you stop showing up for yourself. I showed up, and that's enough. No hashtags, no links, no dramatic image. It spread faster than I expected. Thousands of likes, comments, DMs. I didn't stay online long, logged off. Not to hide, but to heal. Closure doesn't need applause. It just needs silence that doesn't hurt anymore. The envelope sat on my counter for 3 hours before I touched it. Thick, with gold-trimmed edges. Same brand Cheryl used for the wedding invites. Same forced elegance. This one read, "You are invited to a family reconciliation dinner." No note, no explanation, no apology. Just an invitation. I stared at it like it might speak first. After all that's been said, they still want me to sit at their table again. I didn't rip it. I didn't burn it. I just left it there, unopened. That weekend, I went to a book reading at the local library. Nothing fancy, no one I knew. Topic was personal boundaries and family dysfunction. Fit the mood. The speaker, a woman in her 60s, talked slow, like she knew her words might bruise. You teach people how to treat you by what you tolerate. That line landed in my chest like a stone in water. I grabbed a brochure from the back table and wrote it in the margins. It was the first thing I'd written for myself in weeks. Later that night, I pulled out the wedding binder. The big one, heavy. It didn't feel like grief anymore. It felt like evidence. Every contract, receipt, and list, all perfectly filed. I flipped through it slowly, one last time. Then I separated everything into 2 piles. Refuse, keep. The only thing that went into the keep pile was a napkin, folded into a maple leaf, the one I made for Cheryl's bridal shower when I still thought helping meant belonging. I slid it into the kitchen drawer next to my tea towels. Symbols only hurt when you let them belong to someone else. A few days later, Cheryl showed up. No warning, no flowers, just her. She stood on my porch like she wasn't sure how she got there. "I didn't expect it to explode like this," she said. I nodded. "That's the thing with silence. It accumulates interest." She hesitated. "So you're not coming?" "I came for 39 years, I said. "You just never noticed." Her shoulders dropped. No argument. No tears, just the weight of reality pressing between us. She left quietly. That evening, I lit a candle, poured myself a drink, and opened my journal. First entry in months. I didn't write about her. I wrote to me. You were never too much. They were just unwilling to hold space. I sealed the letter in an envelope, placed it in the box with the napkin. Some endings don't need closure. They just need peace. 2 nights later, I went to dinner with Bobby and a few new faces. Nothing grand. A modest kitchen, cheap wine, laughter that didn't feel forced. Someone asked me what I do for work. I smiled. "I build things," I said. "And sometimes I dismantle them." I reached for my napkin, folded it slowly, almost out of habit, into a leaf. This time, the table belonged to me.